Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. It's Leanne here, and this is another DIY video for you. Today's video is taking this bargain find that I got on eBay of this really old, it was labelled as a gypsy jewellery stand. It was really old, it was really smelly, it was really mouldy. It was a little bit more than I would normally pay for something second hand and needing a little work like this. But I've been looking for something like this for my greenhouse, for storing my seeds, so I paid £15 for this. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove all the hooks from the front, as I don't want the hooks to be there and they were very rusty. Then I'm going to remove all the drawers and give this a really good clean. This thing was covered in mildew and mould and had obviously been outside at some point because it was stinking. So some baby wipes and some eco-bacterial cleaner to begin with, just to get the worst of it off, as you can see here, because I didn't really want that mould and mildew to be on my cloths. So I opted for baby wipes to get rid of that first. Then I would switch to my cloth and give it a second cleaning with the same bacterial stuff, and that was really just to try and sort of permeate the wood and get rid of the stinking smell, which actually worked a treat. This is the wild rhubarb scented method cleaner, and I sprayed it all inside and gave it a clean out. It looks so much better here. Okay, so the next thing to do whenever I'm using old wood is to prep the surface by sanding off any shine with some rough sandpaper. I just did every single surface, and then be sure to wipe away all the dust with a damp cloth or another clean with the bacterial cleaner when you have sanded every surface. Now the colour I'm using here is actually a colour I made myself. I upcycle a lot of wood into things for my second business, ThyWitchsKitchen, and this is a colour that I like to use a lot for a certain design. So this is actually a mixed colour that you can't buy, so I'm sorry about that, and it is a mix of emulsion paint and chalk paint. So everything will get a good first coat with a really little small brush. I like to get into every crack and crevice. I wasn't really looking to make this piece flawless by removing like raw edges, jagginess, things not fitting properly. I wanted that rustic look. Then I moved on to the drawer fronts. Now they had a pre-clean already, but I decided to remove the handles for this part because I decided that I was going to keep the handles and paint them another colour. So I'm just removing them there, and I give this an inside and out paint with the same blue colour. Now my greenhouse is being turned into a half greenhouse, half candle workshop where I make all my products for ThyWitchsKitchen. So I've got a really sort of rustic celestial folk art theme going on in my greenhouse that this little cabinet was for. Now the handles were made of a really, I think it was plastic. They felt a bit like they were maybe resin, so I sanded the surface to get rid of the shine so the paint would have something to grip onto, and I made sure I did a good thorough job with every inch of those little handles and wiped them down to get rid of all the dust. These were actually a pain to sand because they were so fiddly, but it was definitely worth it because painted they look absolutely great. So I was painting them with Arteza acrylic coloured paint in the colour gold, and I really love the Arteza acrylic paint. It's great for so many things that I do, and as long as you're putting a lacquer over the top, it's okay for small things like this little cabinet, which isn't going to get a tremendous amount of use, especially not the drawers. So I'm aging my little box piece here by going over the edges and things with some of the gold paint. It's just the style that I'm going for with this. If you look in the background, the little drawers in the background with the stars on, that's black and gold. It's the same style as that I'm going for. It's a very folk art, old worldly, whimsical design, except my greenhouse is all blues and golds. So I decided to go around every single edge that I could find with the gold, and I just had a really thin amount on this almost dry brush, and I'm just brushing it on every corner and every edge and every little narrow surface that I can find. And once I'd gone around the whole cabinet, I decided to draw on the stars because, like I said, this is going to be a certain theme that is going in my greenhouse that you will see at the end of this video. My greenhouse is a work in progress, and this is only the second month of me owning the little greenhouse, so it's still got a lot of DIY projects to be done for it before it becomes my little witchy greenhouse haven. So I paint the stars with some acrylic paint in the same colour gold, and it is pretty pernickety and time consuming and took me quite a while. Luckily though, it's only a sparse amount of stars across the whole little unit and some little dots, so it didn't actually take hours upon hours, but it was still time consuming. It's always best to draw your stars out first though, to get an idea of placement and a guide to follow. Now with these little stars, I always give them 2 coats. It makes a difference to the opaqueness. You'll see after I do this little first star here, it just looks more solid and filled in. But it could have probably done with a 3rd coat to make it completely opaque, but as I'm going for a kind of rustic, used, worn look, I didn't mind the fact that some of the stars are a little bit patchy. Then I went in with a nail dotting tool and added my little dots all over sporadically. As you can see, I have some stars on the front 2 corners, and the side facing us has got some stars, and there is some on the very top, I think, or some dots. So the next stage is to line my little drawers with some felt because they were really rough on the base, so I didn't give the bases a 2nd coat of paint. And I'm just going to measure out some blue felt. The reason I went for such a light colour of blue is when you open those little drawers, it brightens them up and makes it easier to see things that are in the drawers. If you go for a dark colour of liner, it makes it hard to see what is actually in the little drawers, especially if you're out in the greenhouse. And the greenhouse has no electricity, it only has daylight or moonlight if you go out in the dark. I'm thinking of adding some fairy lights to it at a later date, but you'll see at the end what I'm talking about, my little greenhouse. So I'm just measuring out my drawer liners, and I'll do each one of these one at a time because this was a handmade unit and a bit rustic, and the drawers are not exactly the same size. Now I made this perfectly square, but when I try it in the drawers, you can see here it needed some adjusting in a couple of areas just to accommodate where the drawer was not perfectly straight. So after measuring that out, I just eyeball it. This is a process I do with a lot of my upcycled boxes and things on ThyWitchsKitchen. I think felt just adds that extra layer of finished and makes it really nice. Makes it really usable. So a lot of my jewellery and altar boxes have lining like this. Okay, so I use wood glue to glue down the felt. It's much thicker than PVA glue, it's much stronger. It's also a lot quicker at drying. It doesn't seep through the felt and make it splodgy and patchy in areas. And it's just the preferred glue that I use for doing things like this. As you can see, it's a nice little fit, and that drawer is ready to go back in, and the next one to get started. Okay, so when I was finally done and I'd put the handles back on the drawers, which I didn't show in the video, I go in with a varnish gloss. Now in the case of this little unit, I don't want it shiny, I want it semi-matte, so I went for an acrylic varnish. Quite a lot of the boxes I make, I go for a high gloss oil based varnish, but because this is for me and not to be sold in my shop, I'm just going for a couple of coats of my acrylic varnish. Now this little shelving unit is actually going to be used to store all my seeds for my vegetable garden for years to come. In a future video I'll be showing you how I'm going to store the seeds on this little shelf. This is it in my greenhouse. This greenhouse is a work in progress. There's my rustic shelves that I got last week. This is my storage shelves for drying out my flowers and things. This is the side of the greenhouse where we grow seedlings before they get put out in the garden. And I still have to make covers for all those lower shelves for all the candle making supplies and all the other things. As you can see, it's very much a tiny little space, but I'm going to make it an awesome little space when I actually get around to doing some more of the DIY projects. Can't wait to see this little thing full of little bottles of seeds. And then this area here, this is our garden. We had a wood delivery to start building planters. I have my herb garden down there, lettuce growing there. In the back of the garden, sorry, there's my greenhouse. In the back over there we have 4 planters with different peas and beans and some spinach. And that wood on the floor there, we're going to build a lawn planter there with some of this wood that's lying here. And these pallets are getting made into something. Over here is my little potting bench. I still have work to do in this area of the garden, but the goal for this garden is to eventually have a little cottage themed witchy country garden with lots of growing fruits and vegetables. So hopefully you'll come back and see us again with the next video, and I hope you enjoyed this. Until next time, bye!